This second portion of our agenda is focused on Robo Advisors, savings apps, and students. Oh my. I've had an opportunity recently to chat with a number of teachers and students about how they're teaching about saving and investing. And in some cases, folks like to tell me, well, things don't change, but so much in personal finance. We can continue to use the same materials we've always used. And to a degree, that's correct. But one of the challenges, I think, is, there is a lot that changes. And this is one area where I personally feel like there's been a lot of growth and changes in recent years, and wanted to just spend a little bit in our session today to familiarize you a little bit, give you just a really quick down and dirty overview of some of what is out there, with an encouragement that you spend some time considering how you might integrate this within what you're doing to teach personal finance. So we're going to start on the topic of robo-advisors. I've seen this written a couple different ways. Some people hyphenate it, some people don't. Not that that really matters. But anyhow, what are robo-advisors? Well, first of all, it's not a robot. It's actually a computer program that really smart people have written that are designed to help investors manage their own investments. So this goes beyond just picking specific stocks or mutual funds or bonds to having a set strategy for investing that is done based on, in most cases, sort of a questionnaire or a survey that you fill out about what some of your goals are, where you are, your age, where you are financially. And then it offers advice based on that. These really got started in about 2008. Some of the technology was available previous to that, but it was being used mostly by advisors and others. The first time that this really became sort of a self-service platform was when Betterment launched in 2018. It is really, really growing. It's predicted to grow about 68% every year, and they're estimating that it'll reach about $2 trillion worth of assets under investment by 2020. So that is really an exponential growth in this industry, and something that I think in particular, the studies and when they look at who's using these services, it's primarily being used by individuals who are under the age of 45. Certainly your students would fall into that category, and perhaps you yourself might as well. Not to say that this isn't something that people of all different ages can't use. I thought I'd share this little infographic. I don't know how many of you, I'm going to put everybody's hands down for a second because some of you had them raised from before. Raise your hand if you've ever been to napkinfinance.com or seen what they call napkin finance. This is a great website, not just for explaining or looking at what robo-advising means, but they have what they call these personal finance napkins, where it's kind of like everything you want to know on the size of a cocktail napkin about a topic. And they're really fascinating. They have them on all sorts of different subject areas, all personal finance related, but anyhow, all different topics within personal finance. So I pulled this one up. And basically, it sort of summarizes some of what I've already said. It's a computer program used to manage your assets. And they look at sort of robo-advisors versus a financial advisor, a real live person. So one of the things that robo-advising has going for it is it's unbiased, low fees, there's tax efficiencies, it's automated, focused on small portfolios, whereas the financial advisors are really looked at as being more customized. They provide emotional support. I'll get to that again in a minute. You have more control. It's not just about investing, and they're probably much more appropriate for individuals with complicated needs. So that's just a sort of a snapshot there of what robo-advisors are. So who are these robo-advisors? Well, there's a bunch of companies that are doing this nowadays. Betterment that I mentioned that came out in 2018 is still around and going gangbusters. These are some of the other sort of big players in this space. Some of them have sort of their own niche or niche. Elvest is focused primarily at women in particular. You see some of the sort of the big companies that are out there in the world of investing, not just robo-advising, listed here, Charles Schwab and Vanguard. And one of the things that a lot of the investment firms have discovered is that if you can't beat them, join them, as the old saying goes. And so a number of different firms have come out with their own versions of these products. So Charles Schwab, Vanguard, Schwab I think has a minimum investment of $25,000 for theirs. Vanguard is $50,000. Some of these are more hybrid, so where you can have the benefit of both an individual advisor, but a lot of sort of high-tech, high-touch is what some of them are referring to those. And others of these, though, allow for a much smaller investment, especially a lot of these what are referred to now as fintech, financial technology companies. And that's what this new sector is referred to, this fintech sector. And it seems like every time I turn around, there's another one of these coming up. So this is by no means an exhaustive list, but the infographic from Napkin Finance sort of covers this, but just once again, sort of the pros and cons of working with a robo-advisor. This is, by the way, something that you could ask students to think of on their own without giving to them. But very accessible, or in your, this is a mobile device or mobile app that's in your pocket, way less expensive in most cases, very easy to use, really works well with simple goals or basic investment strategies. Want to look at this on the flip side. Robo-advisors often don't have a full view of your financial position, so it may not take into consideration extenuating circumstances or other assets that you might have, or your sort of whole budget and everything else, whereas a financial advisor can get into more of the nitty-gritty and get a complete picture. You may have little to no input on what specific assets are part of your portfolio. So if you are a socially responsible investor and want to make sure that you are doing your due diligence and investing in companies that you can really get behind their mission and their motives and how they do business, that might be more challenging with a robo-advisor, although there are some that are specific to that kind of investing. There's no emotional support. It sort of seems a little bit weird, but really a lot of times investing is sometimes an emotional, anxiety-ridden world. You want somebody to call and you say, hey, I heard the news and it looks like the Dow dropped or it rose, what should I do? And if you're the kind of person who needs to pick up the phone and call somebody and work through those issues, especially as you see what's going on in the news or worry about what's happening in the economy, you don't get that with a robo-advisor as you would with an individual. Moving on to the savings apps piece, I want to talk about those just a little bit. So there's a variety of these out there. Again, they are varied, just like the investment apps. They are used for a lot of different reasons. They can help users to save more money by setting savings goals, rounding up purchases, and locating ways to reduce spending. So I'll share with you some examples of those in a minute. And they can connect either to your own account or that of a specific institution, which is something you really want to look at when you are investigating these different apps. So let's look at some of the examples. So again, lots of different ones. Acorns is really popular, Chime, Capital with a Q, Clarity Money, Digit, and Stash. The two at the bottom, Dobot and Rise, are some sort of newer entrants to this. to this area, but again, all of these are some, of the really popular ones that are out there now. Stash is sort of a little bit more on the investing side. Some of these kind of could cross over between the saving and the Robo advisor investing side, but wanted to give you lots of different examples for you and or your students to investigate. So this is an example from Dobot. So the question that they're asking here is, what are you saving for? And so this individual has said, okay, I'm saving for vacation. I'll need $3,000 and I hope to have it by July 2017. It says here, estimates are fine. You can update it later, and then you create your goal. So again, here, this is, sort of that goal-based. A lot of us, we teach students about, setting savings goals and, making sure that those are realistic and time-bound. So, this gives a deadline for when you're going to have it. It's very specific because it says how much you're going to need and what it is that you're saving for. So some of them are focused on specific goals. This one comes from Acorns. One of the things that Acorns does, which is interesting, there's a specific debit card that you use that's tied to your Acorns spending account, and every time that you spend with that debit card, so for example, if you go and you spend $3.60 on a coffee, it will round up that purchase to $4 and take the difference and put it into your savings account. So what this is trying to do is just find really small increments for individuals to save. One of the things that we know is that most people don't think that saving is exciting or sexy or fun. So, how can you do it so that people, get into the habit of saving, even if it's just in really small amounts? And that's one of the great things about these savings apps, as opposed to some of the investing and robo-advising ones, is these are really focused on low dollar amounts. You can get started with, $10 with some of these programs. And it really is about just, having those quick wins and finding success in sort of, in that short, small dollar amount kind of area. This one comes from Clarity Money. So this one helps also track your spending. And so this one, it looks at, in the last 30 days, how much you've spent and what percentage of that is, in this case, on restaurants. We know that research on teen spending and young adults shows us that in a lot of cases, before they have other expenses, that actually food is their #1 expense. And there may be ways for them to, if they track that, to start to realize how much they're spending and find opportunities to cut back or to save. This is another piece from the one on the right, is also from Clarity. I think this is really fascinating. It takes a look at what you're spending on and identifies ones that may perhaps be something that you could give up. So do you really need that Netflix account? It shows here, what's the yearly cost. A lot of people look at, well, it's $14.99 a month, for Audible or what have you. That's not that big of a deal. Well, if you count that up over the course of a year, well, that starts to look like a bigger amount. So really neat, really neat option for individuals, to, I always try and caution people that, saving money by not spending it does not equate to saving money as in putting it in your savings account. You have to actually make up the difference by actually putting it into your savings account, or not spending it. Just finding a deal is not equivalent to actually saving for the long term. But anyhow, so why savings apps? They promote saving more often. They encourage people to save in small amounts. Are very easy to use. You may, however, need a new account in order to open one. Some of these, they're tied to sort of their own bank or their own institution, so it may not connect with your existing account. And you still need to make sure that you let the savings grow. Some of them allow for very easy withdrawals from savings, which certainly doesn't encourage a longer term approach, but that's something that I think is important to look at when you're comparing and contrasting. So when it comes to educating students about these, a couple of ideas. First of all, your students may in fact know more about these than you do in some cases. I'd be curious how many of your students might have heard of some of these or looked at some of these, especially if you're one to maybe be a little bit apprehensive about connecting your finances to your phone. Or, in my case, I'm pretty comfortable investing on my own. I do a pretty good job of setting money aside for savings. I don't necessarily need to do these kinds of things, but, to be up to date and current on what's taking place and what young people are doing, this is what I need to do. I need to stay abreast of these types of apps and products that are out there. So I'd encourage you as an educator, you might not use, you certainly don't need to go out and use all of these, but it really is helpful to get an idea of what they are and to encourage your students to be learning about them. So with that in mind, I think about, just sort of the knowledge and, do your students know what they are and how they work? Almost all of these sites have some kind of a demo video. A lot of them are, 45 seconds, maybe as much as 4 minutes, but students can go on and see how they work. Do they understand why people would use them and what the alternative might be to not using something like this? Could they figure out a way to do kind of the same thing without using the technology, or is this the way to go? Really could encourage them to think critically. This is about being a smart consumer of these products. So, is it a product? Is it coming from a trusted source? What do you need to look for and how do you compare? On the handout, in the handout section or on the link that was sent in the reminder email, there's a Google Doc with the agenda and the bios. I put in I think it's 2 pages worth of links to all of these different sites and apps that I mentioned. And I also put some into NerdWallet and Investopedia and Bankrate, were just 3 that I found are really easy to use and understand for students. In some cases, like NerdWallet, for example, and even Investopedia have reviewed a lot of these. And look at what the pros and cons of each of the apps are. In addition to sort of some, this one might be best if you want to do X, they also have in-depth reviews of the specific apps in a lot of cases. So, something that your students might want to consider is, reading those, seeing what they think, maybe doing a compare and contrast activity to look at the difference between some of these. And then maybe get them to be creative. What would they like to see that would be even better? What would their ideal app be? How could they take one of these and improve upon it? Or if they were to start from scratch, what would their end all be all financial app look like? So some neat things that you might be able to do with students in this area. So with that, I did get a question here on whether or not any of these are totally web-based. So consumers do this on their computer. All the ones that I was showing are all app-based, and I was really looking at the app side of things. I haven't looked as much at the savings side on some of these. I think in some cases, some of what if you were just looking for a web-based solution, if you wanted to just get in the habit of, transferring $5, a week or $10 a week from your checking account to a savings account, that could be set up through your online banking platform. These are a little bit different in how they operate. Although that said, Acorns and their rounding up, some of that idea actually came from a product that was available through Bank of America. And is specific to Bank of America accounts. So there are ones that are like that.